This is the story of a clever young man who was a member of the Northumbrian aristocracy. He joined the monastery on Lindisfarne when he was 14 and grew up to be a really influential monk who was friends with kings and queens. His name was Wilfrid.
Wilfrid's story is told here at Hexham, where he founded a marvellous monastery over 1300 years ago. There's nothing left of it above the ground, but there are lots and lots of marvellous Anglo-Saxon things inside, and a surprise underground. Wilfrid got the idea for his monastery from one of his many visits to Rome. He went on pilgrimages 3 times, and it was a long way. From Hexham to Rome, it's 1,420 miles, so he travelled more than 8,000 miles in order to find out about the churches of Rome, and on one of those visits, he even went to see the tomb of St Andrew, who was one of Jesus' disciples. And it was those pilgrimages which gave Wilfrid the idea of building something here which still exists, something fantastic. Can you see it? Ah, that's because it's down there. This is the crypt. It's a place where Wilfrid could show off precious relics of saints that he'd brought back from his pilgrimages. Maybe even St Andrew's knee bone. Pilgrims would come to Hexham in order to see the relics, and Wilfrid had designed his crypt to be a bit like an early museum. The pilgrims would come down these narrow, dark steps, and perhaps in the light of a flickering candle, and they would work their way along narrow, dark corridors, the walls lined with curious carvings. The corridors were all twisty and mysterious, full of strange corners and dark little turns, until suddenly, there you are, in the main chamber, lit by lamps set into the walls, and with the relics in caskets lying around. Oh, it must have been so impressive. Wilfrid filled his church with all of the finest craftsmen and art and carving that he could find, like this chair, this stool. It's called the footstool, and it was his bishop's throne when he was a bishop, and it's just got some lovely Anglo-Saxon carving here. There's intertwined serpents here, like you find in lots of places, and this one here is called the Triquetra, and it represents the Holy Trinity. You've got the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. At one time, the whole of the monastery would have been filled with stuff like that. There's still lots left, but it must then have been marvellous, just like one of the churches in Rome. So what can I tell you about Wilfrid the man? Well, he did have some problems. He had a tendency to fall out with people, for example, and he was sacked as bishop, not once, but 3 times. He even spent some time in prison. So sometimes people think of him as the bad boy among the northern saints, but you know, that's not fair, because he had lovely qualities too. He could be really loyal. Once he risked his own life to stay with a friend who was going to be executed. He was a great talker. He was chosen to represent the Roman side at the great Synod of Whitby. We know he was a marvellous builder and brought all of these skills and crafts into Northumbria, and he was a fantastic preacher too. He was the first Anglo-Saxon to go overseas to preach, and he was the man who converted the last pagan kingdom of Anglo-Saxon England, the South Saxons, to Christianity. He had wonderful qualities. Wilfrid died in 709 AD. He wasn't buried here at Hexham. His body was taken to his other great monastery at Ripon to be buried. Bede really admired Wilfrid. He'd actually met him. So let's hear what he's got to say about the saint.
The renowned Wilfrid ended his days after 45 years as a bishop. The coffin containing his body was carried to his own monastery at Ripon, and buried with the honours due to so eminent a bishop.